I quit without warning. And I took the truth with me. I didn't give 2 weeks' notice. I didn't write a long, sentimental goodbye email. I didn't sit down and explain myself to anyone. I just logged out, turned in my access card, and walked away. And with me, I took the truth that nobody in that company wanted to hear. I worked at a place where, from the outside looking in, things always seemed to just work. You know the type. Deadlines were always met. Clients seemed perpetually calm. Problems rarely ever escalated to a crisis. If you were an outsider, you'd think it was a well-oiled machine, the picture of efficiency, but from the inside, it was a house of cards, incredibly fragile, and ready to collapse at any moment. Now, I wasn't a manager. I wasn't in leadership. I didn't have a fancy title, but I was the person people quietly came to when things didn't add up, when the numbers didn't match, when a process suddenly broke. My official job description was simple, straightforward, but in reality, my day-to-day was a constant patchwork of fixes, overrides, and last-minute workarounds. I was the one correcting reporting errors right before they landed on a director's desk. I was the one smoothing over client issues before they blew up and became a real problem. I was the one fixing mistakes that were made because of rushed decisions from above. And here's the kicker. None of this was ever documented. It wasn't because I didn't want to. Believe me, I tried. Every single time I asked if we could slow down, document a process, or build a more stable solution, I was told the exact same thing. We just don't have time for that. The entire company ran on appearances. As long as things looked fine in the weekly meetings, no one wanted the messy details. Leadership preferred convenient optimism over hard accuracy. If something broke quietly and got fixed quietly, in their minds, it was never broken at all. And because I kept fixing things behind the scenes, they operated under the dangerous assumption that the system was stable and robust. The first real red flag for me, the moment I knew something was deeply wrong, came when I raised a serious concern. I went to my manager and explained that a critical process was completely unsustainable. It relied entirely on my undocumented, tribal knowledge. My manager just nodded, listened, and then said, "Let's not overcomplicate things." Nothing changed. A few months later, the pressure cooker was turned up. The workload increased dramatically. More clients, shorter timelines, but of course, the same old resources. I flagged the risk again. More urgently this time, I laid out the potential for failure. My manager's response, "Just keep doing what you've been doing." And that's when it hit me like a ton of bricks. They didn't want solutions. They wanted silence. They wanted the magic to keep happening without having to ask how the trick was done. My job wasn't to solve problems. It was to make them disappear. I didn't rage apply for new jobs. I didn't storm into my boss's office and threaten to quit. I just started quietly planning my exit. I documented everything. But this time it was for me, not for them. I polished my resume. I started taking interviews on my lunch breaks, and eventually I accepted a great offer from another company. That's when I made a decision. I wasn't going to give them a 2-week transition period. I wasn't going to train a replacement or write a handover document they'd never read. I wasn't going to give them the courtesy of a warning they never gave me. On a Tuesday morning, I sent a single, short email. The subject line was simply, "Resignation," and the body of the email was just as brief. Effective immediately. I am resigning from my position. I wish the team well. That was it. I returned to my laptop and my key. I logged out of every system for the last time, and left. At first, there was just confusion. My colleagues probably thought I was sick, or maybe on an unannounced vacation. It was temporary, right? But then my access didn't come back on. The little green light next to my name stayed gray, and that's when the questions started. By the second day, the small cracks began to show. Reports didn't reconcile. The numbers everyone relied on suddenly didn't match up. Client emails started going unanswered because nobody knew who was supposed to handle them. Leadership started asking, "Why isn't this done?" And for the first time, no one had an answer. By the end of that first week, The picture became painfully clear. All those daily tasks I handled weren't actually assigned to anyone else. Those critical processes existed only in my head, and the thousands of quiet fixes I had been applying for years were suddenly very, very visible by their absence. The cracks weren't cracks anymore. They were gaping holes. Now the leadership team was in full panic mode, asking the questions they should have asked years ago. Why does this whole system depend on one person? Why isn't any of this documented? Why didn't anyone flag this as a risk? The answers were all there. They were in old emails I had sent. They were in meeting notes they had ignored. They were in all the warnings that were dismissed as overcomplicating things. But I wasn't there to point them to the evidence anymore. They ended up hiring an expensive consultant to figure it all out. Then they hired another one. They had to schedule emergency meetings, pause major projects, and explain missed deadlines to angry clients. The cost of replacing my quiet, invisible work was astronomically higher than the cost of just listening to me in the first place. I heard later, through the grapevine, that my old manager told someone we had no idea how much they actually handled. But that wasn't true. Deep down, they knew. They just didn't want to hear it. They chose not to know. I want to be clear about something. I didn't sabotage anything. I didn't delete a single file. I didn't hide information or passwords. I simply stopped holding everything together without the permission, the time, or the support to do it properly. When I left without warning, I didn't take any company secrets with me. I took the truth. And without someone there to quietly absorb it, to patch it up, to hide it from view, they finally had to face it. My silence was louder than any warning I could have ever given. Thanks for watching. If this story resonated with you, let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more content. See you next time.